AITA because I don't want my half-brothers to come on a trip with my uncle and I. Jeremy, 15M, and two older half-brothers, Tim, 18M, and Shane, 17M. We have the same mother, but they have a different father. Tim and Shane's father is very involved in their life, and they live with him every other week. On the other hand, I have a deadbeat absent father that I never see. I have no relationship with my half-brother's father. My half-brothers do not treat me the same way they treat each other. I have friends with older brothers who are supportive and hang out with them and are there for them, and mine are nothing like that. When Tim and Shane are at their dad's, I spend the weekend with my uncle, dad's brother. Because of that, my uncle and I are very close. One of the things we do together is watch NASCAR. He made me a fan, so it's become our thing. As far as I know, my half-brothers don't watch NASCAR. I've never watched a race with them, at least. The next week, Tim and Shane were supposed to be at their dad's. My uncle was taking me to the NASCAR race in Atlanta that weekend. Just him and I. However, my brother's dad has had to go away on some business trip, meaning they aren't going to their dad's next week. Since they'll be here, my mom also invited them to come to the Atlanta race with my uncle and me. I don't want them to come. When they go skiing or any of the other trips they take with their dad, I don't get invited. They go away with him 2 or 3 times a year. I've never been away because my mom can't afford it. This will be my first time on a plane. They get everything. This is one thing I had, just my uncle and I, and she just invited them. Since they're going, I no longer want to go, and I'm considering telling my uncle that tomorrow. When he told me they were coming, he could see I wasn't happy. But he said since they're home, he wants to invite them. But it's not my fault their dad is going away. I know my uncle can't uninvite them now, so I think I just prefer to stay home and not go. Would I be the if I told my uncle I didn't want to go and instead stayed home? Update. After reading the comments, I realized it wasn't my place to ask my uncle not to invite my brothers. Also, if I chose not to go, it would just be denying myself something I wanted to do and would upset my uncle, which I didn't want, so I decided to go to the NASCAR race. I also decided against saying anything further at that time. The days before we left, it felt like my brothers were being nicer than usual, so that was cool. They made a group chat so that it would be easier to keep in contact on the trip. I roomed with one of my older brothers, Tim, in the hotel. On Saturday, we went to the racetrack for the first races. I was getting food when I accidentally cut the line. I thought the people standing in front had already ordered. Someone pointed it out to me and I went to the right spot in line. There was a guy in line who was super mad, going on about how I was a little brat and only apologized because I got caught, and he walked up to me yelling. And then Tim appeared and told the guy to calm down and stop yelling at me. He kept yelling at me and Tim stood between me and the guy and told him, "If you say another thing to my little brother, we're going to have a problem." And the guy finally backed off. I've never seen Tim as mad as he was right then over that guy yelling at me, and it meant a lot the way he jumped in. Back in our hotel room that night, I was thanking Tim again for standing up for me earlier, and he told me as his brother, he'd always do that for me. It seemed like the right moment, so I finally took the advice and opened up to him. I told him that I wished we all hung out more together, and I'd like to do more stuff with him and Shane. We talked for a long time about our relationship. Tim then talked to Shane because the next day he apologized. When we flew back home, Tim had told Shane more of what I had said. He asked me if he could first. Tim and I went out on Tuesday and talked about it a bunch, and he kept apologizing for letting me down. I told him it was probably mutual and I didn't act like I wanted to spend time with them. But he told me he was my big brother and should have been better. We've all agreed to do better going forward. Kind of funny that it was a drunk guy yelling at me that got me to open up in the end. Thanks to everyone who gave me advice.